So this is a module, as Isabella had mentioned, called Islandora Repository Reports, and it is designed to provide canned but configurable queries against your Islandora/Drupal site. You may be wondering, why is he demoing something that sounds like what Views does? Views, this module is designed to be simple out of the box, whereas Views is super powerful, but is not always simple out of the box. Plus, the kinds of things that many Islandora repository managers would like to know can be achieved via Views using a view, but there may not be suitable output formats for those kinds of queries, depending on what they are. Perhaps CSV might be the closest, but then you would need to put it into its own visualization after you ran your Views query. So what I want to do is just run through a number of the canned reports that come with the module. I want to tell you up front that this is a live demo on a brand new site that is going to be launched a week from, next Tuesday, a week from yesterday. And my colleague Jana Spencer and I are going to be talking about this site, which is our SFU's new institutional repository called Summit, in this lightning talk session and a couple of lightning talks. And I promised her I wouldn't reveal too much about Summit in this one. So because it is a brand new site, because it is fairly large, about 20,000 objects, a couple of these reports don't work. They just time out. And I think one of the things that we could do to improve this module, if people find it useful, is to figure out a way to make the reports work on an infinitely large repository. For example, querying Solar or something of that nature. But I'll stop talking about the module and just show you how it works now. So I got about 5 or 6 different reports that I'll demonstrate for you. As you can see, a link to the Islandora Repository Reports tool appears in the standard Drupal reports menu. This will look familiar to most of you. I'll click on this. First one I'm going to demonstrate is nodes by content type. So of course we have many repositories have multiple content types. This particular repository has 3 main ones that we use, and I'll show you what those look like in this report. I'm not going to generate a CSV of this data at the moment. I will later on in a different report, but I'm just going to get right into it now. I'll click on Go. Maybe before I do, I'll show you. These are the reports that are available out of the box. There are many sub-modules to this module that let you add new reports, and it is easy for a developer to add a new pre-canned report using these as examples. So here we go. As you can see, we have 5 or 6 different content types in this repository. This is an IR. So the biggest one for us is theses. We have about 12,000 theses in the repository. Next biggest one is what we call SFU published work, and it is all non-thesis content in the repository. And then we have good old Islandora object, the content type that comes with Islandora defaults. We use that for child objects. So this report is fairly, let me see if I can make it bigger. Pardon me while I, whoops. Well, that's not very good. Anyway, the legend here, if you can't, I hope you can see it, gives you the color codes, keys the colors to the specific content types. Next one I'm going to show you is nodes created by month. By month created, I'm sorry. As you can see here, I get to choose which content types I want, and I'm going to choose theses and published works and collections and repository items, all 4 of the content types that we use in this repository. So this is maybe an unusual output for this kind of query, because it only shows 2 months really in the chart, and that's because the initial migration of our repository happened back in August of 2021. Here we are a year later and about to launch, so it's been a slow process for us. But 20,000 or odd nodes were created in that month, and then you can't really see it, but in July of 2022, just the month that just ended, we have been creating a bunch of test nodes. When we do our final migration of about 1,600 nodes sometime this week, you would see a little bit of a blip for August. If I want to just limit the query to a particular month, I can do that, and I'll do it here for demonstration purposes. Limit the query to July of 2022. And this is a zoomed in view, obviously, because I have only 1 month where we only created seven nodes in that month. But you can limit many of these queries by a particular month or month range, not all of them, but there's no reason why we couldn't add that month range into all of the queries. I'm going to show you next nodes by Islandora model. So this is the Islandora models. And I'm going to just choose repository item. Sorry, published work for this one. Click on go. We have mainly digital document, no surprise for an IR. The next biggest one is binary, which means everything that is not, it's miscellaneous really. I'm going to regenerate this. Oops, we're seeing an error. New one for me, but good to see it in a demo. I'm going to generate CSV for this one and show you what that looks like. Well, actually, I probably can't show you what it looks like because I'm sharing this one screen, but it does provide a link to a CSV of that data. So not only do you get the visualization here out of the box and in the Drupal admin interface, but if you check that option, generate CSV data for this report, you get a link that will download a CSV for you, and it gives you the same data, but in that form. The next one is interesting because it is one of the ones that fails for us because of the size of our repository, or in particular, the size of our person vocabulary. Let me just queue it up and I'll explain why that is. Nodes by terms and vocabulary. So in this report, you get to choose the content type you want to include, type only one at a time for this particular report. We could probably fix that if we put our minds to it. You get to choose a date range like we saw in the last example, and you get to choose a vocabulary. Now, the reason that I'm not going to demo person vocabulary is because I know it will fail, because we have 23,000 entries in our person vocabulary, and it fails because it just times out. It takes this module longer to query all 20,000 nodes and group them by items in that 23,000 item vocabulary. It just times out. This is one of those kinds of queries or reports where I think it would be worth looking into querying Solr, for example, which is optimized for that kind of query in a very short amount of time. So I think that would be a suitable replacement back end for this particular query. It would probably work in every case, small, large repositories, whatever. But I'm going to show you here one that does work. It's a much smaller vocabulary. I'm going to choose published work, and I'm going to choose no dates in this case. We can try date limiting if you want to see that. But I'm going to choose scholarly level. So scholarly level is a local to SFU vocabulary that indicates whether something is faculty, staff, graduate student, master's, graduate student, PhD, or undergraduate. And this chart shows us that the majority of items that are of the published work content type are authored by faculty, at least one faculty or staff. So because you can have more than one author, sorry, not more than one author, more than one scholarly level, this is an intersection of them all. And not surprisingly, because we have so many theses, the next biggest category is graduate students, masters, and then graduate students PhD is the smaller one, which probably reflects our student demographics. The next one is nodes by terms and vocabulary. Yes, the same. Sorry, that's twice in my list. Sorry about that. Moving on from node reports on nodes, I'm going to show you a couple of reports of disk usage. And we have disk usage that we can group by a couple of different facets: Drupal file system, MIME type, and collection. I suppose we could have had Fedora file system here, but I just didn't add it for some reason. So we're going to try file system first. And this shows for the Drupal file system, Fedora is included in this. We have two file systems in this particular repository, Fedora and public, like many repositories would. And this shows that of 170 gigabytes currently used in total for all the files in this repository, the vast majority, 165 gigabytes, is in our Fedora file system, and a very small sliver, 5 gigabytes, is in our public file system. The public file system would be things like thumbnails and things of that nature. You can also group by MIME type. This might be interesting for repository managers embarking on a digital preservation analysis or something of that nature. Here we have way too many results to see meaningfully. I'm sure you can't see it. I can barely read it myself. But I can read a few off for you. The first one in the large green slice is application PDF, which again, most of the things in our repository are PDFs. The next one in royal blue is image JPEG. I'm reading from the key here. Looks like the biggest is PDF. The next biggest is video MP4, which kind of makes sense to me because videos tend to be big. Even if we don't have a huge number of them, then we can see that they take up, that files of that MIME type take up a relatively large portion of all the disk space used by this repository. I think one of the things we could do to improve the usability of this module is where we have output like this, and I've seen it larger. If we were to do, person, for example, with 23,000 items in that vocabulary, we may not, we may have hundreds of facets in the output. We want some way to make that key a lot more usable than it currently is. And the last one I'm going to show you is disk usage by month. And again, not going to specify a month here. I'm just going to click on use no months as the parameters for my query. But as you can see, this kind of reflects the nodes created by month that I showed you a few minutes ago. In August of 2021, of 170 gigabytes total in the repository, 168 were taken up by the initial migration of our repository. In July of this year, last month, there's a very small number. This is 2-point-some gigabytes. So that's all that I wanted to demonstrate for you. I'll just demonstrate one more thing, though, I think, before I go ahead. And this is how you configure it. There are a couple of configuration options, not very many. You can choose to cache the report data if it's very large and you want it to be faster. You can choose two different kinds of round charts, pie or donut. Donut has the hole in the middle with kind of bands around the outside, not the typical pie chart. And you can choose the bar color of the bar reports that we saw a minute ago. That's it for my lightning talk.